I've always been a handheld gaming enthusiast, but growing up, my options were limited. It was either a Game Boy or one of those cheap Tetris portables. And obviously, I went with the Game Boy. Fast forward to today, and we've got the opposite problem. The market's flooded with cheap Chinese handhelds, and while some of them are cool, they don't really scratch that nostalgia itch. Meanwhile, original Game Boy hardware is slowly breaking down. In 2021, video game hardware manufacturer Analogue set to fix that problem with the Analogue Pocket, a beefy $220 handheld built to replace the original Game Boy devices. It accepts original cartridges, offers near-perfect compatibility, and wraps it all in a sleek, modern design with just the right touch of nostalgia. But the big question remains, is it worth the asking price? Or should you just stick with original hardware? Or perhaps even with Chinese options? Let's find out. The Analogue Pocket's main selling point is its perfect compatibility with the entire Game Boy lineup, from the original all the way to the Advance. Now, for a lot of people, phrases like perfect compatibility don't mean much. But in this case, it's worth paying attention to, because the Pocket isn't built like most modern handhelds. This thing is fundamentally different. Unlike most Chinese handhelds that rely on software emulation, the Pocket is powered by FPGA technology, which means it recreates the original hardware at a circuit level. This brings perfect compatibility, which is both a blessing and a curse. You see, any slowdown or quirks present in the original games are faithfully preserved. Game compatibility aside, a good handheld is one that has a long battery life and a crisp screen. The Pocket rocks a cutting-edge LCD panel that sports a 1600 by 1440p pixels resolution in a 10 by 9 frame. That's a 10x resolution boost over the original Game Boy, which allows games to scale without any artifacts. It's honestly amazing how well these games look. When it comes to color reproduction, the Pocket doesn't have perfect black levels, since this isn't an OLED panel. That said, games still look fantastic on the display, and you'd be hard-pressed to notice anything lacking. Besides, most Game Boy games were never designed with perfect black levels anyway. Moving on to audio, one of GBA's biggest drawbacks was its lack of a dedicated sound chip. Instead, the CPU had to handle audio playback alongside game logic, which often led to that signature fuzzy, slightly muffled sound. Personally, I find it to be one of the system's defining quirks, but I also understand that it can be annoying for some. The Pocket tries to sidestep this issue with a built-in feature that cleans up the audio. The results are impressive, though it can feel a little strange at first if you're used to that classic GBA fuzz. The speakers themselves get decently loud, but they do lack a bit of bass, making some sound effects a little thin. At the same time, it's not like these games were made for TV playback, so overall it's a win. Moving on to button layout, the Pocket stays true to the original Game Boy design, but adds just enough modern flair to make a real difference. For starters, it includes shoulder buttons for proper GBA support. Then you've got two extra face buttons, which quietly opens door to the SNES games, more on that later. Holding the system feels comfortable in hand, and I rarely had any issues with button placement or reach. That said, my hands are on the bigger side, so your mileage may vary. As for the button design itself, I'm no expert on membrane quality or travel distance, but in everyday use I had no accidental presses and the controls feel solid. Everything responds to the way you'd expect, nothing mushy, nothing overly stiff. Battery life on the Pocket is excellent. It's powered by a 4300 mAh battery, nearly the same capacity as the much more demanding Nintendo Switch. I consistently get around 7 hours of playtime, even with brightness maxed out, which honestly, you rarely need since the screen is plenty bright at lower settings. It takes around 2 hours to fully recharge the device, which feels a bit slow considering it supports 20W fast charging. The good news is you don't need an official brick. I've been using an old Xiaomi 65W charger without any issues. The last thing I want to touch on is the device's FPGA cores. It's essentially a reprogrammable hardware block that mimics the behavior of original game console's chip at the circuit level. The Pocket's onboard chip isn't a one-to-one replica of the original GBA processor. It's actually much more capable. The system isn't limited to just Game Boy games, it can even run SNES titles with near-perfect accuracy. The Pocket also handles Genesis, Neo Geo, PC Engine, and a wide range of arcade boards through FPGA cores. In most cases, the performance is nearly flawless, and some cores even let you boost the emulated speed to eliminate slowdown that was present on original hardware. Before we discuss Pocket's competition, it's worth reviewing original hardware. After all, there's something special about playing games on the systems they were made for, and for many people, that experience starts with the GBA SP. Indeed, the Pocket is pricey. With the same budget, you could pick up a GBA SP and still have some cash left over. And honestly, if you're on a tight budget, that's what I would recommend. You can find an AGS 101 model for around $130, about $90 cheaper than the Pocket. So why the 101 model specifically? Well, it's all about the screen. The AGS 101 features a true backlit display, while earlier AGS 001 is only front-lit. The difference is instantly noticeable, especially in darker environments. The catch is that the 101 launched after the DS had already hit the market, so it wasn't produced in large numbers. That's why it's a bit harder to find today, but definitely not impossible. That said, when hunting for one, make sure you're not overpaying, because at the end of the day, this is still aging hardware. Just last month, the hinge on my 101 IQ GBA cracked out of nowhere. I didn't drop it or mishandle it. Cosmetically, it looked great for its age, but that's the thing, it's not exactly built for long-term haul anymore. Then there's the screen. When you compare the two, the Pocket actually outshines the 101 in a few key ways. Its pixel response time is way better than the original, and you get more screen space to enjoy your games. As for controls, the 101 is solid. I really like its D-pad, but it's a tiny device which is both a blessing and a curse. It fits in your pocket effortlessly, but holding it for long-term sessions can get uncomfortable. The Pocket, on the other hand, is bigger and less pocket-friendly, but it feels easier to hold for extended play. Battery life is another factor with original hardware. My unit still runs strong, but I know it won't last forever. When the battery finally gives out, I'll probably just remove it to avoid leaks and move on without replacing it. But despite all these drawbacks, the 101 still has its charms. It's incredibly compact, fully compatible with the entire Game Boy library, and it just works. Your second option is to get a DS. It has full compatibility with GBA games, but you can't use it to play original Game Boy or Game Boy Color titles. Not officially, at least. Another thing to consider is that not every DS model accepts GBA cartridges. Only the original DS and DS Lite have that GBA slot. That said, if you've got a DSi or DSi XL, technically there's a way to play GBA games on those too. Getting a DS is one of the cheapest ways to get into GBA gaming, with the average price is sitting around $60 on eBay. I recommend getting a Lite model, as the original DS has a truly horrible display. The Lite feels like it's from the future. It's got a vastly superior screen, refined buttons, and best of all, a sturdier hinge. DS lets you choose which display you want your GBA games to appear on. In my case, the top screen is actually brighter and has less ghosting than the bottom one. But I have no clue if this applies to all DS systems. The image is slightly scaled down on both displays though, so you'll notice small black borders around the edges. That means the picture is a bit smaller than on native hardware. But the upside is that it's not stretched or disordered, and it doesn't have weird artifacts during scrolling either. The speakers are another win. You get proper stereo sound, and this time there's actually a dedicated headphone jack. It's a small detail, but an important one. To this day, I still don't understand how Nintendo managed to redesign the GBA and thought it was a good idea to remove the headphone jack. GBA compatibility on the DS is basically perfect. That's because the system has an actual GBA processor built into it, so you're not dealing with emulation. But you are locked out of Game Boy games. As a redeeming quality, you can play all of the DS games, something the Analogue Pocket can't do. Battery life is pretty solid on my unit, but all the usual limitations of aging hardware still apply. It's old, OEM replacements are basically non-existent, and if the battery stops holding a charge, it's honestly easier to just remove it altogether. Overall, the DS is a fantastic way to enjoy GBA games. It's affordable, reliable, and still holds up surprisingly well. Your third option is to get a Chinese handheld. These have come a long way. They're affordable, powerful, and can emulate just about anything from 8-bit to the 32-bit era. But they do come with trade-offs. For one, they rely entirely on emulation, so you don't get the same level of accuracy or feel as the original hardware. You also can't use your original cartridges, which might be a deal breaker for collectors, and setting them up isn't always smooth. Each emulator has its own quirks and menus, so you'll have to spend more time tweaking settings than just playing things. It's not exactly a plug-and-play solution. The biggest advantage is their price though. For a fraction of what the Pocket costs, you can get a device that emulates everything from NES to the PlayStation 1. Overall, they're great if you're on a tight budget. So the question is, which one should you get? Honestly, it depends on what you're after. If you want that authentic nostalgic feel, and don't mind dealing with aging parts, the original hardware still has a lot to offer. Devices like the 101 or DS Lite are affordable, reliable when in good condition, and they play your cartridges just like they did back in the day. But if you're after the best display, modern build quality, and long-term reliability, the Analogue Pocket is in a league of its own. It's more expensive, sure, but you get a premium experience without the quirks and compromises of aging technology. For me, I like having both. Original hardware scratches that nostalgia itch, but the Pocket is what I reach when I just want to play things without fuss. And that's gotta do it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and click the bell for YouTube notifications. And to get in touch, just use Blue Sky. That's all from me for now. Thanks for watching.